Let's get one thing straight. Positive thinking isn't always the magic bullet people say it is. In fact, it can be dangerously misleading. You've probably heard it before. Just stay positive. Look on the bright side. Good vibes only. Sounds nice, right? But here's the problem. When you're constantly forcing yourself to be positive, you're actually turning your back on something way more powerful, the truth. Your fears, doubts, and frustrations aren't weaknesses. They're data, signals, tools. Ignoring them doesn't make you stronger, it keeps you stuck. So in this video, we're going to break down the toxic side of blind positivity and show you how real growth starts when you stop pretending everything is fine and start facing reality head on. Ready? Let's go. Part 1. The Trap of Toxic Positivity. Let's start with the concept of toxic positivity. It's the belief that you should be happy no matter what, that you should smile through the pain, suppress the discomfort, and just be grateful. But here's the truth. Forcing positivity can become a form of emotional denial. Negative emotions like fear, anger, sadness, they're not your enemy, they're messages. Suppressing them in the name of being positive doesn't make them disappear. It just buries them deeper, and over time, that pressure builds up. Studies have shown that this kind of emotional avoidance can increase stress, anxiety, and even depression. Why? Because there's a constant gap between what you really feel and what you think you're supposed to feel. There's a powerful example from prisoners of war, especially those who survived long-term captivity. You might think it was the ultra-positive soldiers who survived, but no. It was the ones who balanced hope with radical acceptance. They weren't pretending things were fine. They accepted the brutal reality of their situation, but they held on to a grounded belief that they would one day make it through. That's the difference between blind hope and realistic optimism. Hope on its own can become wishful thinking, detached from action or facts. Realistic optimism is strategic. It acknowledges obstacles, it faces fear, and it still chooses to move forward. Part 2. Ray Dallio and the Art of Facing Reality. If you've never heard of Ray Dallio, let me introduce you to one of the most successful investors in the world, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund built on one core principle. Face reality, always, no matter how painful. While most people chase positive thinking and motivational quotes, Dalio does the opposite. He believes that real success doesn't come from hoping things get better. It comes from seeing things exactly as they are and dealing with them head-on. In his best-selling book, Principles, Dalio talks about what he calls radical truth and radical transparency. He teaches that ignoring problems doesn't make them disappear, it makes them worse. And that the only way to improve anything in your life, your business, or your mindset is to look at the brutal facts, even when they're uncomfortable. What does this look like in real life? Imagine you're running a company. Sales are down. Mistakes are happening. Competitors are moving faster. What do most people do? They sugarcoat the situation. They tell themselves it's just a phase, or we'll bounce back soon. Ray Dallio? He does the exact opposite. He wants to know the ugly truth, not because he enjoys it, but because it's the only way to make smart decisions and fix what has broken. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic clarity. It's about combining belief in the future with a clear-eyed view of the present. That's realistic optimism, not blind hope, not toxic positivity, but courage with eyes wide open. The pre-mortem technique, Gary Klein's genius move. One of the tools Dalio swears by is the pre-mortem method, developed by cognitive psychologist Gary Klein. It works like this. Before launching a project, imagine that it completely fails. Then ask yourself or your team, why? What went wrong? What blind spots did we miss? What assumptions were false? This reverse engineering forces you to drop the rose-colored glasses. It breaks the illusion of certainty, and it brings real risks to the surface. By doing this early on, you don't just react to problems, you prevent them. You build resilience into your strategy. You train your mind to expect and prepare rather than just hope. Why radical acceptance is so powerful. So why is Dalio and so many other high-level performers so obsessed with facing reality? Because pretending everything is fine never works long-term. Problems you avoid today will come back tomorrow, bigger, messier, and more painful. But when you own your situation, no matter how tough it is, something shifts. You take back control. You stop being a victim of circumstances, and you become the architect of your response. In daily life, that might look like admitting your habits are holding you back, realizing a project or idea just isn't working, accepting that failure is part of the path, not the end of it. And look, Dalio never says it's easy. In fact, he'll tell you it's brutally hard. But that's what makes it powerful. Most people aren't willing to go there. If you are, you already stand out. A quote to remember: Ray Dallio has a mantra that sums it all up. Embrace reality and deal with it. 6 words that can change the way you lead, think, and live. It's not flashy, it's not comforting, but it's real. And it's what actually works. Quick story recap. Picture yourself standing in front of a wall. You have 2 options. You can pretend it's not there, stay positive, and hope it disappears, or you can face it, study it, and find a way over, around, or through it. Dalio always chooses the second path. And that's what took him to the top. Part 3. What science really says about optimism, pessimism, and why your brain doesn't always tell you the truth. Now that you've seen how blind positivity can backfire, let's dive into what science actually says about how we think, especially when it comes to optimism and pessimism. Because here's the deal. Your brain isn't a perfectly rational machine. It's not designed for truth, it's designed for survival. And sometimes that means lying to you, gently, subtly, repeatedly. So let us break down a few powerful psychological concepts that will completely change the way you understand your own mindset and help you use both optimism and pessimism strategically. Martin Seligman and Learned Optimism. How to train your mind to see the light without ignoring the darkness. Picture this: you're standing in front of a mirror, but it's not just reflecting your face, it's reflecting your beliefs, what you think about yourself, your future, what just happened, and what's possible next. Now here's the catch. That reflection, it's not fixed. It's shaped by how your mind interprets the world, and that you can train. That's exactly what Martin Seligman, often called the father of positive psychology, discovered in his groundbreaking book, Learned Optimism. He didn't just argue that optimism is useful. He proved it's learnable. Not a personality trait, not a genetic gift, but a way of thinking you can actually build, like a muscle. And that changes everything. Optimism is about how you explain what happens to you. Seligman studied thousands of people and found one key pattern. It's not what happens to you that matters most. It's how you explain it to yourself. Let's say you failed an exam. A pessimist might go, "I'm just bad at this. I always screw things up." What's the point? That's what psychologists call a permanent, personal, and global interpretation. It turns a moment of failure into a full-blown identity crisis. But an optimist? They might say, "I didn't study enough this time. It sucks, but it's just one test. Next round, I'll prepare better." That's a temporary, external, and specific explanation. The event stays what it is, a moment, not a life sentence. This shift in interpretation completely changes your response. One mindset keeps you stuck. The other one keeps you moving. Why this tiny shift in thinking changes everything? Here's what's wild. Your inner dialogue, those tiny thoughts you barely notice, can fuel your motivation, or completely kill it. When you believe your failures define you, you stop trying. You protect yourself. You shrink your world. But if you see setbacks as temporary and success as possible, you stay in motion. You bounce back faster. You adapt. You build resilience. That's why Seligman called it learned optimism. Because optimism isn't about ignoring your pain. That's about rewiring your mental habits so you can face that pain and still grow. But be careful. Not all optimism is healthy. Here's where it gets tricky. Seligman also warned against the trap of blind optimism, the kind that says, "It's all going to be fine. Just think positive. The universe will take care of it." That's not strength. That's avoidance. Toxic positivity is like covering a leaking roof with glitter. It looks pretty, but the storm's still coming. Real optimism isn't about ignoring the fire. It's about seeing the flames and choosing to act. It's belief in a better future, grounded in awareness of the current challenge. So how do you build this kind of optimism? Seligman laid out a few practical exercises, things you can do today to start reshaping your mindset. Start noticing your self-talk. When something goes wrong, how do you explain it to yourself? Write it down. Challenge your automatic thoughts. Ask, is this really true? Is it permanent? Could there be another explanation? Practice gratitude intentionally. Focus your attention on what is working, even during setbacks, to balance your inner narrative. It's not magic. It's not instant. But over time, this training gives you a serious advantage. The ability to bounce back faster. The strength to keep going, even when it's tough. the clarity to stay in the fight with your eyes wide open. You don't have to choose between optimism and reality. You don't need to lie to yourself to stay hopeful. You don't have to deny the dark to look for the light. Learned optimism is about building a mindset that is strong enough to hold both truth and possibility at the same time. It's not about being positive all the time. It's about being resilient every time. Dalio Sherritt and the Optimism Bias. Why your brain paints a rosier picture than reality. Imagine this: you're standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the deep blue water below. Your mind whispers, "You've got this. The water's deep. You'll be fine." But are you really sure? That tiny gap between what you feel and what is actually true, that is what neuroscientist Dalio Sherritt calls the optimism bias. Your brain is wired to believe things will work out. Sherritt, a leading cognitive neuroscientist, spent years studying why the human brain tends to overestimate the chances of good things happening and downplay the bad. According to her research, this bias isn't just common, it's deeply wired into us. Whether you're applying for your dream job, launching a YouTube channel, or entering a new relationship, your brain quietly tells you, "It'll go great, you're different, you'll beat the odds." This isn't naivety, it's evolutionary. Our ancestors needed this bias to survive, to keep exploring, hunting, building, and risking. Without it, we might have frozen in fear, paralyzed by uncertainty. So yes, your brain is trying to help you, but it doesn't always know when to shut up. The bright side of the optimism bias. Let's be fair, this bias isn't all bad. In fact, it's a powerful driver of progress. It keeps you moving forward. It gives you hope when things look shaky. It pushes you to try when logic says you should quit. Without it, you'd probably never take that first step. You'd stay stuck in what-if mode, paralyzed by doubt. Optimism bias is your brain's way of giving you a shot of courage, just enough to make bold moves that logic alone wouldn't allow. But there's a hidden danger. Here's the problem. When your brain overestimates your chances of success, it also underestimates the real risks. And that's where things can go sideways. Let's say you're starting a business. Your mind paints a rosy picture. Clients will show up, money will flow, things will click. But reality might throw you curveballs, cash flow issues, competition, slow growth. And when you're not ready for that, it hits hard. Not because you weren't too smart, but because your brain filtered out the warning signs to protect your confidence. It's like walking into a storm with sunglasses on, cool, but dangerously blind. When positivity turns into denial, here's where optimism turns toxic. When you refuse to see problems, when you say it's all good, even when it's clearly not, you stop preparing for setbacks. You don't build a plan B, you don't develop resilience. And when things go wrong, you're shocked, and sometimes too discouraged to try again. This is where the optimism bias becomes a trap, a mental shortcut that feels good but costs you clarity. How to spot this bias in your own life? You'll often notice it in the little things. Believing you'll find a job quickly, even in a tough market. Assuming a skill will be easy to learn, and quitting when it's not, expecting everyone to love your work, and feeling crushed by criticism. These aren't failures of willpower, they're failures of forecasting. Your mind tried to protect your drive, but left your strategy exposed. What Sherritt recommends: embrace the bias, but balance it. Sherritt doesn't say to eliminate the optimism bias. You couldn't, even if you tried. What she does recommend is learning to balance it. Let it fuel your courage, but anchor it to reality. That's where realistic optimism comes in. Keep the hope, hold on to belief, but plan for the storm, not just the sunshine. This is what separates the dreamers who stay stuck from the doers who adapt and thrive. In short, your brain loves to cheer you on. It wants you to believe the odds are in your favor, and that's a gift. It's what gets you moving. But if you don't keep that optimism in check, it can set you up for disappointment, burnout, or worse, giving up. The key is simple. Use your optimism to move forward, but never stop checking the map. Don't just feel good, be ready. Julie Norm and Strategic Pessimism. When expecting the worst becomes your superpower, imagine an athlete gearing up for a big competition. Instead of just telling themselves, "I'm going to win, everything will be fine," they take a moment to imagine what could go wrong. An injury, a misstep, a lapse in focus. They're not pessimistic in a depressing way. They're strategically pessimistic. That's exactly what American social psychologist Julie Norm calls defensive pessimism in her 2001 book. Far from being a weakness, this mindset is actually a powerful mental prep tool. What is strategic pessimism? Norm observed that some people perform better not by blindly staying optimistic, but by consciously preparing for their fears. These individuals use their worries to imagine negative scenarios, not to get discouraged, but to better prepare and reduce anxiety. For example, a student before an exam might think about all the questions that could trip them up. They visualize failing certain parts, which motivates them to focus their studying on those weak spots. This mental rehearsal boosts their chances of success. Why does this strategy work? Because it turns anxiety, which can be paralyzing, into fuel for action. By anticipating problems, you reduce surprises and can plan solutions in advance. It also helps lower stress. Instead of vague, overwhelming worry, you give your thoughts structure. And since the brain hates uncertainty, this focus lets it switch from anxious rumination to concrete problem solving. Strategic pessimism versus toxic positivity. What sets strategic pessimism apart from toxic positivity is acknowledging reality. Toxic positivity pushes you to ignore or downplay obstacles, creating gaps in your preparation. Strategic pessimism encourages you to face potential challenges head-on, explore them in your mind, and come out stronger. How to practice strategic pessimism. Here's a simple approach you can try right now. Before a big challenge, spend 10 minutes writing down every negative scenario that comes to mind. Be as detailed as possible. Next, think through how you could handle or avoid each problem. What solutions, resources, or strategies could you use? Prepare backup plans. Plan B, C, even D. The more you anticipate, the more ready you'll be. Use this prep to reduce stress and feel more in control. In summary, strategic pessimism isn't about defeatism or giving up. It's a powerful tool that transforms fear and uncertainty into preparation, clarity, and ultimately success. By embracing this mindset, you add a vital skill to your toolkit: realistic optimism, the ability to accept reality fully while moving forward stronger than ever. What do these studies actually teach us? These three approaches, learned optimism, the optimism bias, and defensive pessimism, may seem different on the surface, but together they reveal one powerful truth. Being positive doesn't mean ignoring reality. In fact, the smartest kind of optimism comes from learning how to deal with negative information, not running from it. It's about recognizing risk, confronting discomfort, and still choosing to move forward, with hope, yes, but also with a solid game plan. Smart optimism isn't about pretending everything's fine. It is about preparing for what could go wrong, and still believing that you can make it work. That's what gives you an edge. That's what keeps you resilient. A quote worth remembering. As Martin Seligman puts it, optimism is key to success, but only when it's grounded in reality. That's the sweet spot. Not blind faith, not constant doubt, but hope, with your eyes wide open. Part 4. Practical tools for realistic optimism. You now understand why blind positive thinking can actually backfire, and why a clear-eyed, realistic optimism is way more powerful. But how do you actually practice this smart optimism day to day? In this part, I'm going to share 3 simple but effective tools that you can start using right now. WOP technique. Let's kick off with a WOOP technique developed by psychologist Gabrielle Oettingen. WOOP is an acronym that stands for Wish Outcome Obstacle Plan. Sounds straightforward, right? Here's how it works. First, pick a meaningful goal or wish. For example, I want to manage my stress better. Next, picture the best possible outcome. Imagine yourself calm, focused, stress under control. Then comes the crucial part. Identify what might get in your way. Maybe I get distracted easily, or I keep postponing relaxation exercises. Finally, come up with a plan to overcome those obstacles. Like, when I notice distraction creeping in, I'll take 3 deep breaths, or I'll set aside 10 minutes each morning for meditation. This method helps you stay hopeful about your goal and realistic about the challenges. By balancing these two, you increase your chances of success. The Brutal Reality Journal. The second tool is a journal, but not just any journal. It's a brutal reality journal. Every week, take time to write down the difficulties you faced, the failures, or the moments things didn't go as planned. What really matters is analyzing these experiences. What did you learn? How will you face these challenges next week? This exercise offers several benefits. It helps you accept reality, even when it's tough. It boosts your self-awareness and clarity about your situation. It creates a positive cycle of learning and adapting. You move from passively hoping everything will work out to actively anticipating and adjusting. Mental preparation for probable failures. The third tool is mental prep for likely failures. Say you're about to launch a project or make an important decision. Instead of telling yourself, everything's going to be fine, you train yourself to imagine what might go wrong. This isn't to discourage you, quite the opposite. By visualizing worst-case scenarios, you prepare emotionally, spot warning signs early, and find solutions ahead of time. It's a kind of mental resilience. You learn not to be caught off guard, not to panic when things don't go as planned. Plus, this prep actually reduces anxiety because you know you've thought through the risks and have a plan in place. Why do these tools work? These three practices share a fundamental idea. They push you to embrace reality without sugarcoating it, while keeping a positive, action-focused mindset. They help you stop ignoring obstacles and start anticipating them, turning challenges into growth opportunities. By using them regularly, you build a smart, lasting optimism that's far more effective than simple positive thinking. Quick recap to wrap this up. Imagine you're a sailor heading out to sea. You wouldn't set sail with your eyes closed to storms ahead. Instead, you check the weather, prep your boat, chart your course, and get ready for the waves. These tools, they're your compass, your map, and your supply stash. With them, you don't just survive the ocean, you master it. Positive thinking isn't some magic fix. Too often, it makes you forget that truth, even when it's tough, is your greatest ally. With realistic optimism, you don't run away from challenges. You face them head on and come out stronger. So now it's your turn. Reflect on how you think. Have you ever pushed positive thinking so hard that you ignored your real emotions or the obstacles in your path? Try the WOOP method and start your own brutal reality journal this week. Mentally prepare for your upcoming challenges with clear eyes and courage. And most importantly, share your experience in the comments, your insights, your breakthroughs, or even your struggles. I'm here to read and respond. If this video resonated with you, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and above all, share it with someone who might need it. You could truly help someone break free from fake positivity that's holding them back. And hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. In every video, we dive into powerful tools to help you become fully who you really are. Remember this, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable. Thanks for being here. Thanks for investing time in yourself. See you soon in a new video on Become Who You Are.